flow.
Welcome to episode 99 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. As of Monday, April 3rd, 2023, the Toronto Maple Leafs are still in second place in the Atlantic Division. Nothing changes. It's been the same old story. The Boston Bruins running away with the division. They've clinched. They might have the best team in the history of the NHL when it comes to the regular season. The Leafs are just fighting Tampa at this point for home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the week that was for the Leafs, going 1-1-1 since our last podcast. And then we are going to talk about the playoffs. Which team has more pressure heading into the playoffs, the Leafs or the Oilers?
Oh,
I promise you want to stay tuned for that conversation. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, happy to be here. It's an absolutely brutal day here in Ottawa, Ontario. We got rain, we got snow. Last time I checked, it was the start of April. Apparently not in your nation's capital. Anthony Bruno, it is episode 99 of the Gluttons For Punishment podcast. Shout out goes to someone who is part of a very common trivia question. Who is the only player in National Hockey League history to wear the number 99, except for Wayne Gretzky? The answer is Toronto Maple Leaf alum Wilf Paiement, who played 3 years with the Toronto Maple Leafs and in 1981 had a 40-goal, 97-point year for the Buds. Some unknown stats about Wilf Paiement.
Lepore, I had no idea.
Yeah,
that was
I thought he was a plug.
I had no idea.
I just thought he was a plug, and then I look, I'm like, 40 goals. I mean, guys, like 40 goals was more common back then, but still. Anyways, there was someone who wore 99 for the Leafs, and we almost had a second one. In 1996, when a contract was apparently made for Wayne Gretzky. But the teachers union, they just thought, why would we want the greatest hockey player of all time wearing a blue jersey? That wouldn't make sense at all, right? So go Leafs.
I would have totally failed that trivia question. That's incredible, man. All right. It is episode 99 of the GFP podcast, the Wayne Gretzky episode of the GFP podcast. Incredible that we've made it this far. And before we get into the hockey talk, Lepore, I'm throwing it right back to you because we have a very special announcement.
We do have a very special announcement. The people who know me well and those who listen to this show know that I am a huge Wayne Gretzky fan. And I thought, you know what? I went to Bruno and I was like, let's do something special for episode 99. So we're going to do something a little crazy today on the Gluttons For Punishment podcast. Those listening, you can see it on YouTube. I am holding up from Frameworth a mystery box, a jersey mystery box. Frameworth does these every once in a while. You pay a pretty good price and you get an autographed jersey. The catch is you don't know which player you're going to get. So you might get Gretzky and you might get, I don't even throw out a random weak player, right? But from this set of mystery boxes, there were some good ones. There is a chance at a Crosby. There is a chance at McKinnon, Carey Price, Marner, Riley. So there are some good ones. You can get a good one. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to open this live on the pod. And again, we have no idea what's in this box. We are going to give it away. We are going to have a giveaway with this jersey. So, I'm nervous, Bruno.
You ready, Lepore? This is
anxious.
big.
I'm anxious to open this up. Okay.
All right, everybody. Lepore is opening the mystery box from Frameworth. We have no idea whose jersey's in this box. It could be Nathan McKinnon or Sidney Crosby, or it could be Jack Campbell.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
Yeah, Campbell Maple Leafs was on the list. Rasmus Sandin Leafs was on the list. Max Domi Chicago was on the list. So,
oh God, I hope it's not something terrible.
Crossed, everyone. I guess suspense, right? I open it slowly,
but we're giving it away nonetheless. And here goes Lepore.
Yeah, so I don't know if I should be more upset if it's a crappy jersey or if I'm giving away an autographed Sidney Crosby jersey. I see red, Bruno.
Red?
I
Okay,
see.
that narrows it down a little bit.
Okay, so what do we got? Maybe Canadian?
Habs, Blackhawks, Red
Carolina.
Wings,
Yeah, Sens third or something.
Sens. What is it?
Oh my God. We are giving away a jersey autographed by Leafs killer Josh Anderson.
No way.
From Frameworth. There it is. The certificate of authenticity, the autograph. Josh Anderson, autograph Montreal Canadiens jersey, the Leaf killer himself. We say often on this show that we're gluttons for punishment, and that's why the podcast has that name. And now we're giving away Montreal Canadiens jerseys.
Is Frameworth just trolling us at this point? Really?
Yeah, maybe.
Of all players, Josh freaking Anderson, who just annihilates the Leafs in the playoffs and annihilates the Leafs every time they play. My goodness.
Absolutely hilarious. Okay, so Canadiens fans, I guess, or anyone else who would want their hands on this autographed Josh Anderson jersey, what you have to do, pay very close attention. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and because it's episode 99, in your comment, tell us, of all of Wayne Gretzky's records, which is the most difficult to break? Which is the one in our lifetime that you don't see anyone getting close to? And don't forget, tell us where you're from and the best way to reach you, whether it's social media or another means, and we'll go from there.
Incredible. I can't believe this. We are giving away a signed Josh Anderson Montreal Canadiens jersey. Josh freaking Anderson. Yeah. Unbelievable. We are being trolled. We're being trolled by Frameworth, by someone. This is just insane. All right, but it's pretty amazing nonetheless. As Lepore said, if you want to get your hands on a signed Josh Anderson Montreal Canadiens jersey, you must like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then in the comment section down below, let us know of all of Wayne Gretzky's records, and he holds a lot in NHL history. Let us know which one is the most difficult to break, the one that in our lifetimes we probably won't see broken by anybody. And let us know why you think that record won't be broken. Give us a nice answer, and then tell us the best way to reach you on social media or any other means possible. And we're going to pick the best one, and we will be getting that Josh Anderson jersey into your hands very, very soon. Yeah, exciting stuff, Lepore. That was awesome.
Proud moment, man. Proud moment. It is hilarious. We can all, again, like I always say about Leafs fans, if there's one thing people have to give credit for to Leafs fans, is we can make fun of ourselves. And we're making fun of ourselves live on the Gluttons For Punishment podcast today. Awesome.
I love it. All right. Let's get into the hockey talk now. That's going to go down as one of the better moments in the history of this show. That was awesome. Highlights. It's time for a quick break for a word about MANSCAPED, because MANSCAPED is here with a deal you can't pass over this Easter season. They've got the tools to give you the beautifully decorated eggs of your dreams. Just because it's Easter doesn't mean it's okay to hide those bad boys behind all that tall grass. So make sure your downstairs lawn is mowed, fellas. Get yourself feeling as sweet as candy by going to manscaped.com and getting 20% off and free shipping using our exclusive promo code GFP20. Lepore, Manscaped does not miss with their amazing products.
It never does, Anthony Bruno. As you mentioned, Easter is coming. It's a time for Easter bunnies, and it's a time to eat cream eggs. So why not take care of your cream eggs with products from Manscaped? Head over to manscaped.com, throw some items in your cart, and don't you dare forget, use the promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
The way you're going to take care of those eggs is by using the Lawnmower 4.0. And all the other great products they have. The Weed Whacker 2.0, the new Beard Hedger Pro Kit, the boxers, which I always rave about to my friends. I tell them they're like the best boxers I've ever worn in my life. But just please, go to the website. You won't be disappointed. Manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping using the promo code GFP20. That's 20% off and free shipping using our exclusive promo code GFP20 at manscaped.com. As I mentioned off the top, since our last podcast, the Leafs are 1-1-1. Mm-hmm. All right. Nothing spectacular. They're kind of just plodding along here. We already know they're facing Tampa in the first round of the playoffs. This has been decided since November. The only thing that still needs to be decided at this point is that who's going to have home ice. Will it be Tampa or will it be Toronto? But over those last 3 games, the Leafs lost in overtime to the Florida Panthers, where they blew the game in the final minute, and the Panthers won in overtime. They bounced back with a 3-0 win over the Senators in Ottawa, and then lost 5-2 to the Red Wings on Sunday night. But Mitch Marner was resting, Jake McCabe was resting, and Mark Giordano was also resting. The Leafs heavily outshot Detroit. But again, it's like, who cares at this point? Just get us to the Stanley Cup playoffs. But Lepore, before we get into some playoff talk, just kind of your general thoughts on what we've seen from the Leafs over these last 3 games, or anything else that you want to get off your chest.
Yeah, so as far as how the Leafs have played and how these games have gone, if you break down each individual game going back to when we got killed by the Islanders, the Leafs have played pretty friggin' well, man. They are outchancing their opponents, outshooting their opponents. I'm pretty sure they've heavily outshot all of their opponents in every game except for the one against Ottawa the other night. So they've looked good. The record doesn't show it. They haven't been that great in terms of their wins and losses, but I think we can feel pretty good that at least we know that at this point they're playing well and they're getting ready for the hockey that actually does matter in a couple weeks. Going specific, well, both games were kind of hilarious, right? How both Florida Panther and who they play last night again? They played Detroit. and Detroit goalies stood on their absolute heads versus the Buds. So very, very typical. One thing I will say, touching on last night's game, okay, I thought everything about last night's game showed what is wrong with the National Hockey League, okay? And
here we go.
Oh, fuck, Bruno. This is one of those moments I've always said with certain topics, I'd love to talk to the boardroom. I'd love to sit in front of the boardroom, ask them this question and see what the answer is or what the response is or the explanation. So last night, you had the Toronto Maple Leafs, the team that is the absolute cash cow of the National Hockey League, playing an Original Six opponent at home. And everyone listening knows how expensive Leafs tickets are. If you want to go see a game live in Toronto, it's crazy. I'm pretty sure it's either us or the Rangers who are the most expensive in the league. And the game, for the most part, was meaningless. Absolutely meaningless, to the point that the Leafs healthy scratched 3 players that otherwise would be in the lineup. And this is not a situation where there's 2 games to go or 1 game to go. As of yesterday, there's 8 games to go?
Leafs
Crazy.
had 6 games left. So they had 7 games left heading into last night's game against the Red Wings.
Yeah, and people can say like, oh, they're still going for home ice, and they are. But the fact of the matter is, this happened. So who does this benefit? And I've been complaining about this playoff format forever, ever since they initiated it. And the immediate response you always get from people is they think you're upset at it because of the opponent you're getting. Like, oh, they be getting so-and-so anyway. No, that's not the point. Someone brought up, pulled out the calendar. I think it was no team in the division has been within 5 points of either Tampa or Toronto since December. We've known like the entire season that they were going to play each other. And here we are with games left, and you have a team resting players. So you had people last night who maybe they take their kid to 1 game a year and they fork out the cash for that 1 game, or they get tickets from their boss or so-and-so who has season tickets. Who knows? Maybe it was someone's first Leaf game last night. They're going to see an Original Six opponent and Mitch Marner's not playing. That's an absolute joke. And people can throw shade at the Leafs for that, saying, your customers deserve more, but the Leafs don't make the rules. If it's beneficial for the team long-term, they're going to do it. And I wouldn't blame any team for doing it. It's just, if the league needed something to see, to slap them in the face and tell them that this format is wrong, it was last night. Because who does that benefit? No one. Absolutely no one.
No, it's pathetic. I couldn't agree more. Heading into last night's game against the Red Wings, the Leafs had 7 games to go, and the Leafs didn't give a shit about this game. The fans didn't care about this game. It's just not right. And saying all that, you could look at the Western Conference and say, well, the opposite is happening. The Central Division is still up for grabs. The Pacific Division is still up for grabs. The wild card is still up for grabs. The Eastern Conference wild card race is tight as well. But for the most part, the Eastern Conference is decided. And you just can't have this happening. I don't care if it's one division or it's only happening in two divisions. You shouldn't have this happening, period, Lepore, where literally for 3 or 4 months, two teams know that they are going to be playing each other in the first round. Yeah. It does not sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with you. It doesn't sit well with a lot of hockey fans. And again, it's not complaining about, well, the Leafs got to play Tampa again in the first round. Sure, that's a little bit of a factor. People are pissed off about that as well, because that's also kind of stupid that the Leafs have to play a team that's been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals in the first round. Now, Tampa, as it stands, they sit 12th in the NHL in terms of points percentage. They're not having this great season by any means, but it's about knowing who your opponent's going to be for months. Nothing changing in the standings. There's no jockeying for position. It's just the same thing for 3 to 4 months. And it's funny because everyone talks about how the regular season doesn't matter for the Leafs. We all know they're great in the regular season, right? Every year, 100+ points. Matthews and Marner have great seasons. Everyone's like, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the playoffs. Well, I mean, this is just making things even worse at this point.
Yeah, fair
You're
enough.
already saying that the regular season doesn't matter for the Leafs. Now it doesn't even matter that much more because they've known they're playing Tampa. So it's like, what are we even judging at this point?
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
People bash on Leaf fans. Oh, you guys are overanalyzing the team during the regular season. None of this matters. Well, of course none of it matters if you know that you're playing Tampa since the end of November, early December. It's awful, Lepore, and the NHL, I think, needs to address this. The sad thing is Gary Bettman thinks that this is phenomenal for hockey, and they're not going to address anything.
Yeah. Something I even thought of, like, watching this game was, as I said, the Leafs have been playing really well, but they haven't necessarily been rewarded for it and putting up wins. Can you imagine the Leafs had another 6 or 8 points? So it wouldn't even be a matter of battling for home ice. It would just be, we know who's going to play and we know who's going to get home ice. It's terrible. It's terrible. And you mentioned like the matchup thing. I think as of yesterday, if we had the 1 versus 8 format, the Leafs would be playing the Rangers. So, I mean, the Rangers could be a harder opponent than Tampa. But again, that's not the point. But it'd be exciting during this last stretch of, oh my God, who are we going to play? Who are other teams going to play? What does our bracket look like? It'd be amazing. I remember, again, like I sound like an old person. Remember back in the day, you'd be watching the last night of the regular season, and when the games are done, it was like, who's playing each other? Because it came down to that. It was
like, what's the playoff bracket? Then you're thinking about like your hockey pool that you're going to join, and now which players are you going to pick? There were so many implications, and it all came down to the final couple games of the regular season. Yeah,
I guess. And again, what hurt, I mentioned how no team has been within 5 points of either team since December, but what also hurt the situation is Boston just kicking the shit out of everyone all year and even being way ahead of the Leafs this whole time. So just a bad situation. And sometimes bad things have to happen for people to really look in the mirror and acknowledge they've made a mistake. And that goes only for hockey. It goes for life and everywhere else. So hopefully someone's bringing this up in the boardroom at the National Hockey League in New York to get this fixed, because it's about the fans, it's about the customers, and it sucks straight up. Who likes this format? Who argues for this format? Comment down below. Somebody comment down below and tell me the benefit of this format. Please, I beg you, because I'd love to hear something.
Sidney Crosby has come out, the face of hockey. And I get it. You could say Connor McDavid's the best player in the world. I think McDavid's the best player in the world, but Sidney Crosby is still the face of this league. He has come out and said that this playoff format sucks. Yeah, he didn't say sucks exactly. I mean, he said it in a nicer way, but he doesn't like the playoff format. If Sidney Crosby is coming out and saying that, I think it's time to look in the mirror and maybe make some changes.
Yeah. It's brutal, man. They have to.
All right, Lepore. So speaking about the playoffs and the matchup against the Tampa Bay Lightning, what are your thoughts right now? Because ever since we kind of bashed the Lightning and said they're having their worst season of this whole dynasty era. And I know the dynasty kind of goes back to that first run to the Cup final that came a few years before this run to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. But over the last 4 years, I think it's still safe to say this is the worst Tampa Bay Lightning team of the last 4 years. But anyway, since we said that, the Lightning have gone 3-0 and outscored their opponents 14-1. You can't make this up. So at this point, the Leafs have a 4-point lead on Tampa with 1 game in hand, and there are 6 games left on Toronto's schedule. Is there any way that the Leafs blow this and don't secure home ice in the first round of the playoffs?
As you're saying that, Bruno, I would have liked that extra point from the Florida game and 2 points last night against the Red Wings. So we really would be sitting pretty. Is there a chance? I mean, there's a chance they blow this, and especially, as you mentioned, with Tampa being on a tear. I look at the schedule and I see Columbus, a team that's trying to lose. And then we have Boston. I mean, I'd like to say Boston's a team that's just chilling, but apparently not. So who knows what happens in that one. And then we have Montreal on Saturday. So I assumed that the scratching of players last night had to do with having Columbus and Montreal in the radar to say, hey, if we have those 2 games in hand, let's say we just dial in on those games versus the Canadiens and Jackets to get the 4 points. You're at a point now where Tampa's pretty well going to run the table. But at the same time, the Leafs can't relax in this situation, because the last thing you want is that game against Tampa, your second last game of the season, to matter. Because even at that point, let's say you're 3 points ahead and you go into that game and you lose. Well, you're 1 point ahead. If Tampa's got, I don't know the schedule. I assume they finish. Is that Tampa's last game or maybe second last game? We have to look that up. But you don't want a situation where
check your schedule right now. So Tampa's you want last game, Lepore, it's Leafs and then Detroit to end the season.
So perfect. So do you want us in a situation where, say, we're 3 points ahead of Tampa going into that game? They beat us, so now we're 1 point, and then we have to go into New York and they're playing Detroit. So we have all this pressure in the last game for home ice. So I'm not going to say they have to put their foot to the floor and go full throttle the rest of the way, but it's not a complete chill zone either as far as how they have to approach these last few games, Bruno.
I used to think that this didn't matter too much in terms of who got home ice. I said, we've seen the Leafs lose in the first round of the playoffs with home ice advantage, without home ice advantage, holding a 3-2 lead in the series, holding a 3-1 lead in the series. And to a certain extent, I still think that it kind of doesn't matter. But the more that I look at some of the stats, it worries me a little bit because of this, Lepore. The Leafs and Lightning have been so dominant at home this year. Outside of Boston, who has the best home record in the NHL by a significant margin, they are 31-4-3 at TD Garden. The Lightning have the second best home record in the league, and the Leafs have the third best home record in the league.
Wow.
So the Leafs and Lightning have been 2 of the top 3 teams on home ice this season. But when you look at the road, and I talked about this on a previous show, the Leafs right now have the 12th best road record in the NHL, which is fine. They're 20-13-4 on the road. But Lepore, the Lightning stink on the road. They are under 500 on the road.
Wow.
They're 18-19-1. That's the 21st ranked road record in the NHL. So wow. I think when you think about this and this season in a vacuum, this Lightning team is basically Jekyll and Hyde at home and then on the road. So if you can secure home ice advantage, considering how poor they have been on the road this season, you got to do it, man. So again, I thought that it kind of didn't matter because we've seen the Leafs lose with every possible advantage, even when they've been at a disadvantage. But man, seeing this Lightning road record this year, you got to take advantage and secure home ice.
Yeah, 18-19-1. And then you really do break it down. I'd like to look up how many shootout and overtime wins they have in those 18 wins. Because if they have, say, 4 as an example, well, then they're really 14-19-5 at home.
Yeah,
right?
So they have 13 regulation wins out of those 18.
That's horrible then. So then they're 13-19-6 at home. If you call shootout and overtime games ties.
Yeah, they have 2 shootout wins, and then I guess what would that be? 3 overtime wins.
That's a terrible record. Like, I'd like to see where they would stand if you did that to everyone, if you just called overtimes and shootouts a wash. That's brutal, man. Now, okay, I was motivated for the Leafs to get home ice advantage, Bruno. But after you spit out those numbers, I knew Tampa wasn't the greatest at home. I didn't know that was the case. So, okay, thanks for giving me the anxiety for the rest of the regular season, Bruno. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's something to think about. And then if you look at the Leafs road record, of their 20 wins on the road, they have won 18 of those in regulation.
Okay. So there you go.
Yeah, so it's yeah, I mean, if you weren't already scared, maybe this is going to scare you a little bit more, because if the Leafs aren't able to hang on to home ice, it's going to take away a pretty big advantage, maybe a bigger advantage than it would be in past seasons, because this Lightning team, like I said, think about everything they have accomplished over the last 3+ years. Now, this being the 4th year of this run, and they are under 500 on the road. There are 20 teams in the NHL this season with a better road record than the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, think about that for a second.
Yeah, and like I said,
Jekyll and Hyde, man.
Like I said, if you adjust the shootouts and overtimes, they're well below 500. Crazy, man. Crazy.
Anyway, anything else you want to get off your chest about this Leafs versus Lightning matchup, or even the Leafs goaltending? I mean, I think at this point,
oh my God,
it's pretty safe to say that it's Ilya Samsonov's net, because Matt Murray is made of glass and he just suffered his 3rd injury of the season against Detroit. And yeah, it might have to be Ilya Samsonov and Joseph Woll in the playoffs.
You know what's so sad? When you said his 3rd injury, the first thing that popped in my head was it's only been 3. That's what popped into my head. But actually, I stepped away from the TV for a second when I was watching the game, and then I got the alert, like Matt Murray's been injured, left the game. And I'm like, oh, Christ, here we go again, Murray, whatever. But then I saw it and I'm like, yeah, he got taken out pretty bad. I mean, you can never blame a goalie for an injury, but that was like, okay. I mean, that's got nothing to do with being injury prone. His legs got taken out and he fell backwards. I'll ask you this, Bruno. Should that have been a penalty?
I think so, because even though it's accidental and Lucas Raymond, lost control, slid into Murray didn't see him, that's still a penalty, man.
Fucking right, man.
It's like with a high stick. If you high stick someone in the mouth, it could be an accident. I mean, it's still a penalty. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. The example I gave is, well, what if he was skating by and his stick caught his blade and he tripped Murray with, well, then they'd call it tripping, right? So what's the difference? Brutal, man. But NHL reffing, whatever. I'll just leave it at that. And bunting. Speaking of NHL reffing, we're just at complete total joke territory now with what happened last night with this guy. I don't know if I should be annoyed with Bunce. I don't know if I should feel sympathetic for him, but the Leafs have to figure this out. And I'm sure you saw Keith's comments saying Kyle's going to have to talk to the league. I think Keith's going to get, first things first, I think Keith's going to get fined for that.
It's possible. I mean, we've already seen Keith get fined. Hasn't he been fined already one time this season?
Yeah, I think he did get fined.
It's possible. I'd have to look at the rules and see what coaches are allowed and not allowed to say during their press conferences, but it's possible. And it's honestly, it's pathetic at this point. Last year, Michael Bunting was right at the top of the league in terms of penalties drawn. And now this year, it just seems like all the refs are out to get him and say, you guys are Leafs homers and like Michael Bunting's a crybaby and blah, blah, blah. But it's getting ridiculous at this point. Like yesterday, he was literally cross-checked in the back and they called him for a dive. Like, are we being serious now? And then the 10-minute misconduct when he was brushing, I don't even know whose stick it was, but he had a Red Wings player's stick on the ice kind of in between his skates, and he kept skating backwards and the stick was moving with him. And sure, maybe he was being a little bit of a little shit in that situation, but really to get a 10-minute misconduct for that, it's outrageous, man. And, even looking at the amount of penalty or power play opportunities the Leafs have had this year compared to the rest of the league, it's becoming a joke, honestly.
Yeah. You see, it was pretty wild on social media, the reaction to this. See Friedman's comments after the game about the whole Bunting situation, how the refs are trying to bait Bunce. That's like, I don't know if maybe he didn't mean to say that. It was inside information he had, but to say that referees are trying to bait a player, there's discussions going on about those comments right now in the NHL because that ain't cool, man. Like, let's not lie to ourselves. These referees manage games. And I will say it, certain games have an agenda. You can clearly see that, this team got screwed last game. So you can see they're getting every call tonight or not getting calls, vice versa. But for someone who's respected as much as Elliot Friedman to say that he has inside information that refs are trying to bait a player into penalties, we're going straight crazy. And it's a collusion, like whatever you want to call it, and call us boohoo Leafs fans. But he said it. So a lot of talks go on today, I'm sure, at Sportsnet and at the NHL about those comments. If it was just a slip of the tongue, maybe we'll give Friedman a little credit, or if it is in fact the truth. And yeah, so I'd like to see if there's any type of follow-up to it, both from Sportsnet or the NHL, to be honest.
That was a bombshell from Elliot Friedman. I mean, when he's saying things like that, as you said, Lepore, a guy who's that well respected around hockey and in hockey media, for him to come out and say that refs are trying to bait Michael Bunting, it's crazy, man. Yeah, I think we're going to see maybe some follow-up comments. I don't know if the NHL is actually going to, respond to that or anything, but,
what's the point?
Maybe the Leafs are going to be asked about this next morning skate. I mean, it's a pretty serious accusation. I mean, it's wild. Again, it's gotten to the point now with Michael Bunting where it's like the cat's out of the bag. The league knows that he's a pest, that he's good at drawing penalties. And now it's just swinging too far in the opposite direction where no matter what this guy does, he's getting a penalty for it. And his reputation it's become, we all know that he likes to get in your face. He's difficult to play against, but now it's hurting him. Last year was helping him, and now it's completely swung in the other direction where it's been a negative for this Leafs team. And heading into the playoffs against a Lightning team that's good on the power play, and we saw what happened last year against Tampa, where they were essentially gifted a 5-on-3 against the Leafs in Game 6 to get back into this series. I mean, God forbid that happens again, but you could already see these things coming in the playoffs. The Lightning, 3 cup finals in a row, so well respected, getting the benefit of the doubt with the whistle, getting an extra power play here or there. Lepore, I can already see this shit coming a mile away.
Yeah. I don't know. And I don't know, man. If you're a referee, it's about balls too going into that playoff series, because let's say you're not calling something on Bunting, or you are calling something on him that shouldn't have been called. There's a big microscope on you, man, in that series. So
that's a good point.
Maybe that calms me down a little bit, especially because I'll say it's the Leafs. It's the league's cash cow. Everyone's watching. You don't want to be that referee who makes that decision in that moment that could cause some controversy, because this is a story, right? So if they feed that narrative in the playoffs, that ain't cool.
That's a good point. I think at the end of the day, all these playoff games are going to get managed. If the Leafs get a couple of power plays to start off game 1, you can bet $1 million that the Lightning are going to get the next power play. That's just how it works. But yeah, I think if it's going to be more under a microscope now because of the whole Bunting situation, that could deter the refs from getting more involved or getting, trying not to determine the outcome of the game. I don't want to say these refs are colluding and there's some other crazy stuff going on, but maybe they kind of ease off a little bit and let the players take care of it themselves.
Well, maybe, weird, eh? Weird if they would actually let the players, be the stars of the show as opposed to themselves.
Now, Lepore, we all pay $250 a ticket to watch these referees get on the microphone and make those calls, man. That's why I pay money to go watch the Leafs. I want to see these refs make calls. That's
100%.
To that.
I want to see 5-on-4s, right? Like, give me a break.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to our next topic here. I teased this at the top of the show. The Leafs and Oilers, man, they're both under a ton of pressure heading into the playoffs. But who's under more pressure?
Oh,
because I think if you make a power rankings and you rank the teams in the NHL, all the 16 playoff teams, which teams have the most pressure on them, you could make a really strong argument that the Leafs and Oilers are 1 and 2. And maybe it's the Oilers at 1 and the Leafs at 2, but I'm having a hard time thinking about another team. And maybe you throw the Boston Bruins in that mix because of the President's Trophy. But then again, you can look at the whole President's Trophy curse, and maybe people are going into the playoffs thinking, well, it's the curse. No one expects Boston to win anyway.
Yeah,
and plus, they already have a Stanley Cup back in 2011. I know it's, now it's been over a decade since they've won. So there's pressure on Boston as well. But man, the Leafs and Oilers are 1-2 in my mind, Lepore. Who do you think has more pressure on them as a team, as an organization, as a fan base, whatever it is? Which team has more pressure?
Make me go first on this one. This is a good one. As far as Boston goes, let's touch on that quickly. I think they got a lot of pressure on them because it's not even about winning a President's Trophy. They could lose in the final. I'm not gonna say that's a disaster, but that's a disappointment after having one of, if not the greatest regular seasons in the history of the league. So the Bruins have some weight on their back for sure. But as far as the Leafs and the Oilers go, I may surprise people with my answer, but I think actually the Oilers have more pressure than the Leafs. And this is how I see it. The narrative with the Leafs is that they can't get out of the first round. You said already on the show, our approach is the regular season doesn't matter and all that matters is the playoffs, because this team, for the life of them, has not been able to get out of the first round. So I just look at possible scenarios. Let's say the Leafs beat Tampa and then lose to Boston in a hard-fought series. We'll be upset. We'll be disappointed. We'll be crying ourselves to sleep. But there still will be the positive of this team took out an opponent, and it'd be a heck of an opponent in the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it was a step. And also, they lost a hard-fought series to one of the best teams ever, right? So I'm not going to say we could be proud of them, but it wouldn't be complete devastation. As far as the Oilers go, I think of it the same way. If the Oilers go out, let's say in the second round, that's a hard disappointment. That's a straight up hard disappointment. And some people would say it's because they made the conference final last year. And that's part of it to me, but I don't see stuff like that. I never see it in the way of, oh, you have to go further than the year before, otherwise you've gone backwards. No, it's not completely linear when the team.
It's not as cut and dry as that.
Yeah, it depends on who you play, your matchups, how the season's gone. Now, I just look at who the Oilers would be set to play. So the Kings and Vegas. If the Oilers lose to Vegas, I'm not saying they should beat Vegas. I'm just saying it'll hurt more if they lose to Vegas compared to, say, how it'll hurt Toronto and Leafs fans compared to them losing to Boston. If Edmonton was playing, say, Colorado in the second round, and that's not a disappointment. I think the way it sets up for them and the way it sets up for the Leafs, and maybe a little of it ties into the accomplishments of the teams in the past, but I think it's the Oilers, man. And I'll even throw in the Draisaitl McDavid factor, and people could point to Matthews and Marner and whether or not they're going to re-sign, but the clock is on the Oilers as well. Like, everyone talks about the Leafs and their contract situations every day because they want people to click and whatever. The Oilers, man, this team has one of the best players ever. And another guy who would be on everyone's list. What's the worst? Like top 5 in the league? Like, you'd be pushing it.
He's a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, you'd be
future Hall of Famers.
You'd be pushing it even there. So I think it's on the Oilers, man. And I mean, if you're an Oilers fan, I hope you're embracing that and you're saying, fuck it, let's go. Yeah, we got to win. Because actually, I'll say it, nothing pisses me off more than when fans go easy on their team. Like, oh, yeah, no, you've Connor McDavid. You got to win. You got the best player. You got to win. I feel that way about the Leafs. We have a guy who's got back-to-back Maurice Rocket-Richard trophies, another guy who was a first team All-Star back-to-back, and another guy who was like the biggest free agent signing in the history of the league. No, we got to win the whole thing. There's pressure here. I'm not going to be, oh, bravo, boys. Like I said, if we lose to Boston, I'll still be crying myself to sleep in disappointment. So to me, it's the Oilers, Bruno. Who do you got?
I do see where you're coming from. And like I said, I think the Oilers have a lot of pressure on them, mostly because they have the best player on the planet and another top 5 player on the planet. And it would be so disappointing. And this is why I'm so hard on the Oilers. Oilers fans come at me all the time because they're like, why are you so hard on our team? You hate all of our players. I don't hate any of your players. I I think your organization is stupid, or they have been stupid, honestly, for most of McDavid's career, because they have not been able to properly build a team around him. They missed the playoffs 3 times in his career, and it's almost been 4 times. I mean, there's been a couple close calls as well. So that's why I'm so hard on this organization. It's because you have the best player, maybe the greatest player we've ever seen, and now we're finally starting to see things come to fruition here. You know, last year they got to the conference final. They got the doors blown off of them by Colorado in 4 games. And this year, the Oilers, Lepore, have actually been the best team in the NHL over the last 35 games. They have the best record in hockey over the last 35 games. I will say their schedule has been kind of soft. They've beaten some good teams in between, like they've beaten Boston, they've beaten the Leafs, they've beaten Vegas. There's a lot of soft matchups in there as well, but the numbers are the numbers. They have the best record in the NHL going back to January 11th, the span of 35 games. So I think there's immense pressure on Edmonton to not only win a series, win a couple of series, get back to the conference final, because can you imagine this team? Imagine they don't re-sign Draisaitl and you have not won a championship with the best player on the planet.
Is that
might go down as the greatest player we've ever seen?
Is that the standard? To me, it's always make the final. If they lose in a Stanley Cup final, I'll say they lost in the Stanley Cup final. Like, I don't think it's, they blew it because they didn't win a championship.
I just think when you're talking about Connor McDavid, like a pantheon player, like one of maybe already, arguably, like we've been saying, maybe the greatest hockey player we've ever seen, just in terms of pure talent. If you're not able to win one Stanley Cup with him, that's going to be a massive disappointment. But saying all that, Lepore, I view the Leafs in the same light. I don't think they have a Connor McDavid on their team, but holy shit. I mean, it's gone to the point now where it's like, you gotta win this first round series. So I think there's more pressure on the Leafs heading into the playoffs because, as we've been saying, it seems like nothing has mattered the entire regular season. You know, even with Austin Matthews, it just seems like he's been almost coasting through most of the season, managing his injuries. The Leafs are healthy, scratching guys now with 6-7 games to go. They gotta win this series against Tampa, man. Tampa, like I said, this is the worst Lightning team we have seen over the last 4 years. They are under 500 on the road this year. They have been struggling since the All-Star break. If you can't beat this Tampa team now, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, they're all healthy. Morgan Rielly. Notice, Lepore, how people aren't chirping Morgan Rielly over the last couple of weeks. People aren't using him as a scapegoat. People aren't mad at him. Why? Because he's playing well. He's playing really well. Morgan Rielly's rounding into form. Ilya Samsonov has looked good. You got to beat this Lightning team. If they don't get out of the first round, Lepore, that's why all the pressure's on this first round series. Whatever happens after that is gravy. And listen, I'll still be pissed off if they lose to Boston because I think the Leafs are capable of winning a cup. Honestly, with the team they have in place, I think they are capable of beating any team in the league in a 7-game series. If they lose to Boston, you know, maybe we're able to sleep at night because Boston's having one of the greatest seasons of all time. They're an extremely deep team from top to bottom. They're a well-respected team. They got a lot of great veteran players. But man, oh man, the amount of pressure on this Leaf team to get through the first round is unlike any pressure that any team in the league is facing at this point, in my opinion.
Okay. Follow-up question, Bruno. Both teams lose in the first round. Who's got it worse? Toronto or Edmonton? Who's a worse look?
The Leafs.
Even the Leafs. You think if Edmonton loses
even
to
though
LA?
It's Tampa, I think the Kings are having a great season.
For sure.
Edmonton's going to have their hands full. The Kings have beaten Edmonton 2 out of 3 times. And the only win that Edmonton has over the Kings, Stuart Skinner had to make 43 saves in a shutout. Okay. And now they have a massive game against the Kings coming up on Tuesday. That is going to be, honestly, maybe one of the games of the year, just in terms of the implications for the Pacific Division. That's a huge deal. But man, yeah, I think it's the Leafs. Like, do you think there's more? Do you think it would be bigger disappointment if Edmonton loses to the Kings in the first round?
Well, I'll put it this way. Is it not so much the disappointment, but what would be more shocking? Because to me, I don't know. Actually, now that I think about it, I'd like to see what the lines are going to be in that LA Edmonton series, because like we know what the Leafs one's going to be. Like if they do have home ice, like slight edge to the Leafs. I'm just trying to think what would be a bigger shock. I mean, no one would be shocked if Tampa beat Toronto, but then at the same time, I don't know, would people be shocked if LA beat Edmonton, or is that like Canadian media? We pump the Oilers and don't give enough credit to the Kings.
I
I don't
think
know.
people would be. I think that the level of shock would almost come from the season that McDavid is having, and even
Yeah.
Draisaitl for that matter. Like McDavid is going to become the first player since Lemieux to hit 150 points 27
Mm.
years ago. You know, the 60 plus goal season. Draisaitl, another 50 goal season. They just have more firepower than LA, and maybe it's a Canadian media thing as well. But there will be a certain level of shock after getting to the conference finals last year, considering how hot they've been the second half of the season. If they get clipped by the Kings, that is not going to sit well, man, with Oilers fans and Canadian hockey fans in general.
Yeah, fuck. We talked about the stretch for the Leafs. Both teams, 5 games to go, 1 point separating them. That's awesome. That's cool. So I don't know. Home ice will be big in that series. We talked about the Leafs and Lightning. The Oilers will want home ice. They will want home ice hard. And I guess, I mean, the Kings will too, to be able to line match McDavid and Draisaitl. So I'm looking forward to that series, man. That might be the juiciest series for me in the first round, those two teams.
Yeah, I love that series. Like I'm like that's one of the series. And listen, you don't watch every game of every series unless you're just a crazy diehard hockey fan and you have nothing else to do and you don't have responsibilities and you're not an adult.
So wait,
it's hard to watch every single game of the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I will make an effort to watch every game of that Edmonton LA series because, as you said, man, that is right near the top of my list just in terms of like intrigue. And I can't wait for that series, man. I think it's going to be fantastic. And who knows? Like, it actually might be the Oilers in Vegas in the first round because who knows who's going to win the Pacific Division at this point. The Oilers could still win the Pacific Division, and then it's Vegas and LA in the first round. But yeah, Oilers, Kings, or even Oilers, Vegas would be pretty awesome.
Yeah. Ironic that we're talking about this on episode 99, an Oilers versus Kings matchup. And to your point, Bruno, about like responsibilities. So what you're saying is now that I have a newborn baby, I'm no longer permitted to watch every second of every series. I actually have to help my wife out once in a while. Is that what you're getting
You
at?
have too many responsibilities.
Your wife, did my wife put you up to that comment?
Maybe. I'm not telling you.
I'll have to have a talk with her after.
But yeah, man. I mean, come on. I mean, unless you're like 15, like when I was in high school, man, you know, I had nothing to do. Like I'm watching everything.
Yeah.
But are you kidding me? As a full grown adult, you have time to watch every single game of every single series in the first round? Am I crazy here?
Yeah.
Who has time for that?
You know what's the ultimate hockey fan sign of old age? When you're watching the playoffs and you get to the point in your life, especially in the late games where they're getting to overtime and you're like, fuck. Or the first overtime's coming to an end and you're just praying somebody score. Because if nobody scores, then it's an intermission and then the next period, and who knows how long it's going to be. And you're fighting the sleep. So that's a sign of old age when you can acknowledge that you're tired and you're going to bed. You'll see the highlights in the morning.
Yeah, Lepore, I'm not going to lie. There's been times in the playoffs over the last couple of years where I'll sit through the first overtime of one of the games in the Western Conference, and then I'm like, all right, it's gone to the point now. It's like 2 a.m. I'm like, I'm calling it a night here. I'll find out in the morning who scored the OT winner. Or I'll just like lie in my bed and maybe just check. I'll check the app. I'll check the score app or whatever and just see who won. But it's like I'm checking out at that point, honestly.
Wake up.
Unless it's like unless it's game 7, then maybe I'm.
Of course. Let's not get crazy here, Bruno.
Clinching game.
Yeah.
And I'm probably just calling it a night.
Yeah, we're not going crazy here. We're watching game 7 till the end.
Yeah. All right, man. I mean, maybe we have a little bit of time to discuss this. Maybe we'll make this real quick.
Yeah.
Flames or Jets? Who's getting that last wild card spot in the Western Conference?
We're going to piss some people off here, regardless of who we say. Flames. I'm saying
you know
Flames.
What? I want to say the Flames.
Okay.
I do because they have an easier schedule. And I'm just going to pull up their schedule again just to confirm this. And now listen, they have a massive game against Winnipeg on Wednesday night in Winnipeg, but it's also on the second night of a back-to-back. They do have an easier schedule, though. They play Chicago, Vancouver, Nashville, San Jose, and Winnipeg. You know what, Lepore? I'm going to say the Jets get in. I want the Flames to get in, but they have to play the Jets on the second night of a back-to-back, which is tough. And the Jets obviously have a 2-point lead on them right now. Man, I really want to say the Flames. I don't know. I'm rooting harder for the Flames. They both have 5 games left, but that extra 2-point cushion for the Jets, I think, will be enough. And I think they beat the Flames on home ice. So I'm going to say the Jets get in.
Yeah, you mentioned the Flames have Vancouver. Vancouver's been one of the better teams in the NHL the last month, so that's not a pushover, right?
Yeah, Vancouver low key over the last 20 games has been like a top 6 to 7 team in the league.
Yeah, I think at one point they had won like 9 of 11 or 8 of 10 or something, like 8-1-1 in 10 in over a 10-game stretch.
Yeah, I believe now they are 10-4-1 over their last 15 games.
There you go.
That team's not a pushover, but no, I'll say the Jets.
Okay.
So you got the Flames and I got the Jets.
There you go. I like it.
All right, Lepore, anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
No, I just can't believe we pulled a Josh Anderson jersey to give away. Montreal Canadiens. Guys, look at this. Who would think that one day I'd be holding up a red, blue, and white Montreal Canadiens jersey autographed by one of their players and be willing to give it away on our podcast, a Toronto Maple Leafs podcast. But like I said, Gluttons For Punishment. It is hilarious. And bring on Canadiens fans, man. Bring on Canadiens fans. We love listeners of who support other teams. It's awesome. That's what we're here for. Great products from Frameworth, man. Cool stuff. It's pretty fun. And to me, the first thing when I saw this idea of like the mystery box, that's an amazing gift to someone. Because again, like it's much cheaper than if you were to say buy a Josh Anderson jersey on their website. You don't know what you're gonna get, but it's fun. If someone who's like a hockey fan all around, they open it and like I said, maybe they get a Sidney fucking Crosby Pittsburgh Penguins jersey or something, right? So looking forward to seeing the answers we get from people, and I'm looking forward to the interaction and the response we get from Canadiens fans in the comments. I usually avoid the comments, but I'm looking forward to see what Canadiens fans are going to write in the comments, just taking shots at it. So it'll be fun.
Oh, I can't wait for the Habs fans to flood their way back into the comments, because they were in all our comment sections when the Habs beat the Leafs in the playoffs. And then even to start the next season, Habs fans were always giving it to us. But now Habs fans, I'm not going to lie, Lepore, they have been nowhere to be seen in the comments section of the GFP podcast, because, you know, they're just playing out the string of the season. They're getting ready for the draft lottery. The rivalry between Toronto and Montreal hasn't been sparked. There's been no reason to have it reignited, but hopefully this reignites it, because we are giving away that Josh Anderson jersey, and I can't wait, man. It's awesome. I'm so happy we did that. Again, we had no idea what jersey we were going to open live on the air here, and of course, it was Josh Anderson, Leafs killer. Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm sure they'll jump back in the comments when Montreal beats Toronto next Saturday and removes our home ice advantage from the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, I can't wait. The Leafs are going to healthy scratch the core four, and I don't know why. Like, the home ice is still going to be up for grabs, and they're going to just scratch like Matthews and Marner, and the Habs are going to beat the Leafs like 4-2.
Yeah, you know, Montreal is going to look like the Canadiens of the 70s in that game, right?
Yeah.
It's like that.
It'll be their Stanley Cup final to end the regular season.
Yeah.
All right, that is going to do it for the Wayne Gretzky episode of the GFP podcast, episode 99. And I promise, if you thought episode 99 was good, you want to stay tuned for episode 100, because it is going to be fantastic. But once again, if you are a longtime listener of the show, or this is your first time listening, give us a good rating and review on either Apple or Spotify, whatever you use to listen to your podcasts. Hopefully it's a 5-star rating. That would be fantastic. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it so much if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Go Leafs, go. Please don't lose home ice advantage. And we will see you in the next one, episode 100.
Thanks, everyone.